It was a busy evening at the restaurant. The warm lights reflected off the polished wood, and soft music played in the background, mixing with the clinking of plates and quiet chatter. The place was full, almost every table taken by people laughing, talking, and enjoying their meals. Among them was a man who stood out, not because of his age or height, but because of the way he carried himself. He was sharp, confident, and had an air of authority that made people notice him the moment he walked in. He sat at a corner table, with his friends, sipping on a glass of red wine and watching the restaurant with a slight smile. Behind the counter, a young waitress was moving quickly, balancing trays with careful precision, smiling politely at the guests, and answering questions. Her movements were quick but graceful, like she had done this hundreds of times before. She was used to the busy evenings, the crowded rooms, and the constant attention of guests who sometimes treated her as if she were invisible. Despite the long hours and the tired feet, she always found a way to keep her smile bright and her voice cheerful. As she walked past the grand piano in the corner, her mind wandered for a moment. She had always loved music, though most people in the restaurant had never guessed it. Music had been a secret companion during hard times, a way to escape from the worries of life for just a few moments. She remembered the small keyboard at home, the hours she spent practicing songs, and the thrill of learning something new. But no one at the restaurant knew about that side of her. Tonight, though, her humming seemed to catch the attention of the man at the corner table. He leaned slightly forward, resting his chin on his hand, and watched as she moved from table to table. There was a playful glint in his eye as he called over one of his friends and whispered something. His friend laughed softly, and then the man pointed toward the piano. The waitress, unaware of the attention, continued her work, clearing a few plates and taking new orders. Finally, the man spoke up, his voice carrying just enough for her to hear. "Do you think she can play that piano over there?" he asked, smirking. His friends laughed quietly, sensing that he was about to create some amusement for himself. Without waiting for a reply, he waved toward the young waitress. "Come on, why don't you show us what you can do? Play us something on that piano." The words hung in the air, and a few nearby guests looked over curiously. Some chuckled at the unexpected dare, while others shook their heads, thinking it was just another wealthy man looking to entertain himself. The waitress stopped for a moment, her hands frozen over the tray she was carrying. She blinked, unsure if he was serious or if it was some kind of joke at her expense. Her heart started to race, a mixture of nervousness and excitement bubbling up inside her. She had always dreamed of playing in front of people, but never like this. Never in a place where everyone was watching her with curiosity, amusement, and maybe even judgment. She took a deep breath and placed the tray down carefully on the side counter. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her mind was focused. She had a choice. She could laugh it off, pretend she didn't hear, and continue with her work. Or she could take a chance, step out of the comfort zone she had carefully built around herself and go for it. Something inside her told her this was a moment she couldn't ignore. Slowly, she walked toward the piano. Every step felt heavy, as if the floor beneath her was suddenly more solid and real than ever before. Guests turned their heads to watch, some whispering, others smiling politely, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. The man who had dared her leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms and raising his eyebrows. He looked confident, almost certain that the performance would be amusing at best, embarrassing at worst. When she reached the piano, she paused for a second to gather her courage. Her fingers hovered over the keys, feeling the smooth, cold surface. Memories of hours spent practicing in a small room at home came flooding back. She remembered the frustration of making mistakes, the joy of finally getting a song right, and the way her heart would swell with pride whenever she could play a piece flawlessly. That same feeling surged inside her now, blending with the adrenaline of performing in front of strangers. She closed her eyes for a brief moment and let her fingers find their place. She began softly, a single note at first, gentle and careful, testing the room. The sound carried across the restaurant, and the whispers and laughter began to fade. Guests leaned forward, curious and surprised. The man in the corner, who had been expecting something simple or funny, raised his eyebrows and leaned forward. His smirk had softened into something closer to interest. With that first note, a new energy filled the room. The waitress's fingers moved with increasing confidence, flowing from key to key, creating a melody that was beautiful, simple, and full of emotion. The music seemed to have a life of its own, growing louder and stronger with each passing second, filling the room with a sense of calm and wonder. People who had been focused on their conversations stopped talking, their attention completely captured by the unexpected performance. Even the waitstaff, busy with orders and clearing tables, paused to listen. The man in the corner was no longer laughing or smirking. He was leaning forward now, eyes wide, clearly impressed. The melody was not just skillful, it had soul. Every note seemed to tell a story, speaking to emotions that words could not describe. Guests who had initially been skeptical now exchanged looks of amazement. Some smiled, some whispered to their friends, and some just sat silently, letting the music wash over them. The young waitress continued to play, losing herself in the music. She felt a sense of freedom she had never known before, a connection to something larger than herself. The restaurant, once noisy and bustling, had become a stage, a place where her hidden talent could finally be seen. Each note was a step toward courage, a declaration that she was more than a waitress, more than the uniform she wore, more than the role people had assigned her. For the first time that evening, she noticed a few people taking out their phones, not to mock her, but to capture this moment, to remember it. The man who had dared her was still watching, but now there was no trace of doubt or amusement in his expression. It was replaced by genuine admiration, the kind that comes from witnessing talent unexpectedly reveal itself. As she continued, the room seemed to change. Guests leaned back in their chairs, letting the music move them. Smiles spread across faces, and eyes glistened with surprise and joy. Some people even whispered, unable to believe what they were hearing. The waitress's heart was racing, but not with fear. It was the thrill of sharing her music, of showing her hidden side to a world that had never seen it before. She realized that this moment, unexpected as it was, might be one of the most important moments of her life. When she finally ended the short piece, the silence that followed was deep and meaningful. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath for a moment, letting the last note linger. Then slowly, people began to clap. Soft at first, then louder, filling the room with genuine appreciation. Even the man who had challenged her stood and joined in, clapping with a smile that was no longer teasing but full of respect. The young waitress felt a mix of relief and exhilaration. She had taken a risk, stepped out of her comfort zone, and, in doing so, she had captured the hearts of everyone around her. The night continued, but something had changed. The music had spoken where words could not, leaving an impression that no one in the restaurant would soon forget. And for the waitress, it was the start of a journey she had only dreamed about, a moment when a playful dare turned into an unforgettable triumph. After her first notes echoed through the restaurant, the young waitress took a deep breath and allowed herself a small smile. The applause that followed was louder than she expected, and she felt a strange mix of pride and nervousness. Her heart was still pounding, not just from the music she had played, but from stepping into a world she had never dared to enter before. She had always loved music, but never in front of so many eyes. Tonight it was no longer private. Tonight it was real. She looked up at the man who had dared her. He was still sitting at his table, leaning slightly forward with a look of astonishment. His smirk had vanished completely, replaced by something she had never seen in him before: respect. She felt a little thrill at knowing that the person who had teased her was now genuinely impressed. She realized that she had won a moment of acknowledgement that meant more than she could have imagined. For a moment, she considered returning to her duties, clearing tables and taking orders as if nothing had happened, but something inside her whispered that this was only the beginning. The piano stood in the corner, inviting her to continue, to explore more of what she could do. She placed her hands back on the keys, feeling the smooth surface under her fingers, and let herself play again. The melody started softly, like a gentle conversation, and then began to grow richer and fuller. With each note, she lost a little more of the nervousness that had gripped her at first. The guests were captivated. They leaned forward, silent now, letting the music take over. Conversations that had been lively and loud moments ago were replaced by a hushed awe. Some people looked around as if checking to see whether others were feeling the same wonder, and then smiled, realizing that everyone was. Even the waitstaff paused, trays in hand, listening to the sound that filled the room. It was a rare kind of attention, one that she had never experienced in her life, and it made her feel alive in a way she could not have described before. As she played, her mind wandered back to her childhood. She remembered the small apartment she grew up in, where the walls were thin and the neighbors often complained about the noise. She remembered the tiny keyboard her family had bought secondhand, and the hours she spent trying to make sense of the notes, the frustration of hitting wrong keys, the satisfaction of finally getting a song right. Those early experiences had been her first steps into a world where music became her refuge, a way to express emotions she could not say out loud. Now, standing at a grand piano in a crowded restaurant, all those years of private practice, of stolen moments alone with music were coming together. She realized that every hour she had spent learning, every moment she had spent dreaming about being able to play in front of people, had led to this very instant. And the strange thing was, she wasn't just playing to show off or to impress anyone. She was playing because it felt right, because the music had been waiting for her to let it out. The man who had initially dared her was no longer fidgeting in his chair. He had leaned back, watching closely, his hand resting lightly on the table as he studied her. There was a subtle change in the atmosphere around him, too. The laughter that had accompanied his dare was gone. Now he seemed to be thinking, perhaps reconsidering how little he had known about the people around him. She noticed him glance at his friends, and they were equally absorbed, some with wide eyes, others nodding in quiet approval. The power of the music was undeniable, and it had captured everyone's attention. She let herself smile as she transitioned into a different piece, one that was more playful and energetic. Her fingers danced along the keys, creating rhythms that made the room feel lighter, as if the music had a life of its own. She saw guests tapping their fingers on the tables, some nodding their heads in time with the beat, and some even closing their eyes to fully experience the sound. The joy she felt in that moment was intoxicating. It was as if the restaurant had transformed from a place of ordinary dining into a concert hall, filled with people who had come to witness something truly special. She could feel her confidence growing with every note. The nervousness that had been there at the beginning was fading, replaced by a sense of calm and focus. She realized that she could do this, that she could let go of fear and simply be herself. The music became a conversation between her and the room, a dialogue where every note carried a message and every pause held meaning. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a musician, sharing her gift with people who had never expected to hear it. As the piece came to an end, she paused again, letting the final note linger in the air. The silence that followed was profound, almost as if the room itself were catching its breath. Then the applause began, slowly at first, then building into a strong wave of appreciation. She could see the smiles on people's faces, the looks of admiration and surprise, and she felt a warmth in her chest that she had never experienced before. Even the man who had dared her clapped the loudest, his eyes shining with genuine respect. After the applause died down, she realized that something had shifted inside her. The fear of being judged, the worry about making mistakes had been replaced by a quiet confidence. She had taken a chance, faced a moment that could have been embarrassing, and turned it into something remarkable. The experience was teaching her that sometimes the things that scare us the most are the very things that can show us what we are truly capable of. The rest of the evening continued, but she felt different now. She moved between tables, taking orders and delivering food, but her mind often wandered back to the piano. She knew that she had discovered something important about herself, something that could not be taken away. Every glance she received from the guests now carried a different weight, a subtle acknowledgement that she was more than just a waitress, that she had a talent worth noticing. Later, when the restaurant began to quiet down and the last few guests left, she found herself standing near the piano, her hand still lingering over the keys. She could still hear the echoes of the music in her mind, and she realized that the night had changed her in ways she could not yet fully understand. She had faced a moment of fear, embraced it, and come out stronger, and the feeling was exhilarating. As she walked home that night, her steps felt lighter than usual. The city streets seemed quieter, but she could still hear the music inside her playing softly as a reminder of the courage she had shown. She thought about the man who had dared her, about the applause of the guests, and about the way she had felt as she played. Each memory was a small victory, a confirmation that she had taken a step forward in a journey that was just beginning. She knew that life would continue, with its challenges and its ordinary moments, but she also knew that she had discovered something extraordinary within herself. The piano, the music, and the courage to play in front of strangers had opened a door she never knew existed. And for the first time, she felt certain that she would not stop there. There was more music to play, more moments to seize, and more chances to show the world who she truly was. Tonight had been the beginning of something new, and she could not wait to see where it would lead her. The next day, the restaurant buzzed with stories from the night before. Guests who had been there shared their excitement with friends, talking about the unexpected music that had filled the air, and the young waitress who had transformed a simple evening into something magical. The word traveled quickly, and even those who had not been present heard whispers of her talent. The young waitress felt a mix of pride and disbelief as she walked into work, unsure how to handle the attention that had found her so suddenly. When she arrived, she was greeted with smiles from her co-workers, many of whom had seen the videos and heard the stories from the previous night. They asked questions, some excited, some teasing, but all filled with genuine admiration. She laughed softly, feeling both shy and proud. It was strange to be recognized for something that had always been so private, something that had only existed in the quiet moments of her life. Her manager called her aside for a moment, a warm expression on his face. He spoke quietly but with excitement, letting her know that some of the guests had left generous tips and compliments specifically mentioning her performance. He encouraged her to keep practicing, hinting that the restaurant might even consider a small performance schedule for her in the future. She felt a rush of emotion, knowing that her life might begin to change in ways she had never imagined. During her shift, the piano in the corner seemed to call to her. Every time she passed it, she felt the memory of the music from the previous night, the way it had made the room pause and listen. She wondered if she could recreate that feeling, if she could capture the same magic again. The thought both excited and terrified her. Performing in front of strangers, even those who already admired her, was no easy task. But she felt ready. She wanted to challenge herself to see how far she could take this newfound opportunity. As the evening crowd began to fill the restaurant, she noticed some familiar faces among the guests. A few had been there the night before, eager to hear her play again. They smiled knowingly as they were seated, exchanging glances that spoke of anticipation and curiosity. She took a deep breath, reminded herself to stay calm, and let the music flow through her fingers. The first note she played was soft, almost hesitant, as if she were testing the waters. Then gradually, the melody grew, stronger and more confident, filling the space with sound. Guests turned their heads, some whispering to their companions, others simply listening in awe. The music was alive, flowing from her fingers and touching the hearts of everyone present. She noticed the man from the previous night sitting at his usual corner table, watching intently, and she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. His look of surprise had not faded. It was now mixed with admiration. As she continued, she let herself explore different styles, moving from soft emotional pieces to lively, playful rhythms. Each transition felt natural, a reflection of her mood and energy. She could feel the audience responding, leaning forward, tapping their feet, and smiling. The connection between her and the room grew stronger with every note. It was no longer just a performance. It was a conversation, a shared experience that brought everyone together. During a brief pause between pieces, a small group of guests approached her table, complimenting her talent and asking how she had learned to play so beautifully. She answered humbly, sharing a few details about her practice and the hours she had spent at home with her keyboard. They listened with genuine interest, asking questions and offering words of encouragement. Their excitement reminded her of the importance of taking chances, of sharing what she loved with the world instead of keeping it hidden away. The evening continued, and with each passing moment she grew more comfortable with the attention. She realized that the music had a way of expressing feelings she could not always put into words. It allowed her to connect with others on a deeper level, to convey emotions that went beyond conversation. This realization filled her with a sense of purpose. She understood that music was not just a hobby or a pastime, it was a gift, and she wanted to use it to bring joy to others. As the night wore on, she noticed how different the atmosphere had become compared to previous evenings. Guests were more engaged, more attentive, and more appreciative of the experience. Even those who had come for a simple meal were drawn into the music, their conversations softening, their attention focused on the piano. She saw smiles, tears, and expressions of wonder, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. For the first time, she understood the power of her talent to create moments that could touch people's lives. She also began to notice subtle changes in herself. Her confidence had grown, not just in her musical abilities, but in how she carried herself. She walked taller, spoke more clearly, and met the eyes of others with a newfound sense of self-assurance. The fear of failure that had once held her back seemed to fade with each performance. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. And with every note she played, she was choosing courage. By the end of the night, the applause was louder and more enthusiastic than ever. Guests lingered, reluctant to leave, wanting to experience the music a little longer. The man from the corner table approached her again, this time with a friendly smile and an offer of congratulations. He praised her ability to captivate an audience and encouraged her to continue sharing her talent. She felt a warm glow of appreciation, knowing that her courage had earned her recognition and respect. As she cleaned up at the end of her shift, she reflected on the events of the past 2 days. She realized that life could change in unexpected ways when she took risks and embraced opportunities. The music had opened doors she had never known existed, and she felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. She knew that her journey was just beginning, and that there were countless moments ahead where she could continue to grow and share her gift with the world. Walking home that night, she felt the city around her in a new way. The lights seemed brighter, the sounds more vibrant, and the people she passed felt connected to her in some unspoken way. She carried the music with her, replaying the melodies in her mind and imagining the possibilities of the future. Every step she took was filled with anticipation, excitement, and a quiet confidence that she had never known before. She knew that challenges would come, that there would be moments of doubt and uncertainty. But she also knew that she had discovered something powerful within herself. The piano, the music, and the courage to perform in front of others had shown her that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. And as she looked forward to the days ahead, she felt a sense of purpose and determination that would guide her through whatever challenges awaited. Tonight, she was no longer just a waitress. She was a musician, an artist, and someone who had taken a leap of faith and found her true voice. The following evening, the restaurant felt different before she even arrived. Guests who had heard about her performance from the night before were eager to see her again. Some of them had even made reservations early, hoping to catch another glimpse of the young waitress who had captivated everyone with her music. As she walked in, she noticed the excited murmurs and smiles directed toward her. Her heart swelled with a mixture of pride and nervous anticipation. She was beginning to understand how much influence a single moment could have on people's lives. Her co-workers greeted her warmly, their excitement evident. They spoke about the buzz from the previous night, and she listened with a quiet smile, feeling both humbled and energized. Her manager approached again, offering words of encouragement and suggesting she prepare for the possibility that more guests might request to hear her play. She nodded, realizing that what had begun as a playful dare was now evolving into something far more significant than she had ever imagined. The restaurant filled quickly, and the atmosphere was lively yet charged with expectation. As she moved among the tables, taking orders and serving meals, she could feel the eyes of some guests on her. Their anticipation created a subtle tension that made her heart beat faster. When she passed the piano, she could hear the faint hum of conversations pausing as people noticed her presence. The memory of the previous night's performance played in her mind, reminding her of the courage it had taken to step forward. When the man from the corner table arrived again, she felt a slight thrill. He greeted her with a nod, a hint of a smile on his face, and she felt a quiet satisfaction that he was back to witness her music once more. She could sense that he was eager to see whether she could recreate the magic, and she knew she had to rise to the challenge. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was her moment, and that the piano awaited her. She approached the instrument, fingers brushing the keys lightly, and allowed herself to begin. The first notes were soft, careful, and deliberate, easing into the melody with gentle confidence. Guests turned their attention fully toward her, some leaning forward in anticipation, others sitting silently with expressions of curiosity and delight. The sound of the piano filled the restaurant, weaving through the conversations and creating a shared sense of wonder. As she played, her confidence grew, and she allowed herself to explore new melodies. She blended familiar tunes with her own improvisations, creating something entirely unique. Each note was infused with emotion, carrying the story of her journey, her struggles, and her quiet triumphs. The audience responded with visible enthusiasm. Some tapped their fingers on the table, others nodded their heads in rhythm, and a few closed their eyes, lost in the music. She realized that her playing was no longer just an act. It had become a language that connected her with everyone in the room. The man from the corner watched intently, no longer the playful provocateur of the previous night. His eyes were wide with admiration, and he leaned forward slightly as if drawn closer by the music itself. His friends mirrored his reactions, and she could see the subtle gestures of appreciation and surprise on their faces. The energy in the room was electric, and it seemed to flow from her fingers through the piano and into the hearts of everyone present. Midway through her performance, she allowed herself a moment to look around the restaurant. She noticed the varied reactions of the guests. Some were smiling broadly, some had tears in their eyes, and others seemed completely absorbed in the melodies. She realized that music had the power to evoke emotions, to create memories, and to bring people together in ways that words alone could not. The thought filled her with a profound sense of purpose. She was not just entertaining, she was touching lives. As she transitioned into a more energetic piece, the atmosphere shifted. The room seemed to pulse with the rhythm of her music, and the guests responded with laughter, applause, and movement. It was a playful, joyous moment that broke the usual formality of the restaurant. Even the waitstaff, usually focused on duties and schedules, paused to enjoy the performance. She felt a sense of liberation, knowing that she could control the mood of the room with her music and create a shared experience that would linger long after the last note was played. Her mind wandered to her past, to the hours spent practicing alone in her small apartment. She remembered the struggles, the moments of frustration, and the quiet victories that had built her skill over time. Each note she played was a reflection of that journey, a tribute to her persistence and passion. She realized that all those hidden hours of practice, once seemingly insignificant, had prepared her for this very moment. The piano in the corner of the restaurant had become a bridge between her private world and the lives of everyone in the room. When she concluded the performance, the restaurant erupted in applause, louder and more enthusiastic than ever. Guests clapped, cheered, and called out words of encouragement. The man from the corner stood and joined in, his expression filled with genuine admiration. She felt a warmth in her chest, a combination of pride, relief, and joy. It was a feeling she had never experienced so fully before. A validation not just of her skill, but of her courage to step forward and share it. After the performance, several guests approached her, offering compliments and expressing how deeply moved they were by her music. Some shared personal stories of how the melodies had reminded them of memories, sparked emotions, or simply brought a moment of peace in their busy lives. She listened, humbled by their words, realizing that her music had the power to make a real impact on others. Each conversation reaffirmed her belief that she was on the right path, and that sharing her talent was not only rewarding but necessary. Her manager stopped by once more, his face beaming with pride. He mentioned that some regular guests had already requested to hear her play in the coming weeks, and that the restaurant might consider organizing a small series of performances featuring her music. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. The thought of performing regularly was daunting, but it also filled her with hope and determination. She knew that she wanted to continue this journey, to explore the possibilities, and to embrace the challenges ahead. As the night wound down and the last guest departed, she lingered near the piano, her fingers brushing the keys absent-mindedly. The memories of the evening's performance played through her mind, each note a reminder of her growth and the connection she had created with others. She understood that this was just the beginning of a larger journey, one filled with opportunities, challenges, and moments of self-discovery. Walking home through the quiet city streets, she felt the lingering presence of the music within her. The night air seemed filled with echoes of the melodies she had played, a constant reminder of her courage and her potential. She reflected on the transformations that had begun in the past days, the confidence she had gained, the recognition she had received, and the realization that her talent could reach far beyond the confines of the restaurant. She knew that there would be obstacles, moments of doubt and challenges to overcome, but she also knew that she had found a strength within herself, a combination of skill, passion, and courage that would guide her forward. The piano, the music, and the connection she had made with her audience had opened doors she had never imagined, and she was determined to walk through them. That night, as she lay in bed, she replayed the melodies in her mind, savoring each note and the emotions they carried. She understood that her life had begun to change, that a new chapter was unfolding, and that the journey ahead would be filled with possibilities. The piano in the corner of the restaurant was no longer just an instrument. It had become a symbol of courage, creativity, and the extraordinary potential that lay within her, and for the first time she felt truly ready to embrace it. The following week, the restaurant felt electric with anticipation. Word had spread beyond regular guests, and the staff noticed a steady stream of new faces who seemed eager to hear the young waitress play. There was a quiet excitement in the air, a feeling that something special was happening within those walls. She arrived early, heart fluttering with a mix of nervousness and anticipation, knowing that her music was no longer just a private escape, but something people were beginning to seek out. Her manager greeted her with a bright smile and a few encouraging words. He mentioned that several guests had inquired specifically about her playing, and that the restaurant might soon consider a small weekly performance schedule. The thought made her pulse quicken, a combination of excitement and nervous energy coursing through her. This was an opportunity she had never imagined, and she felt the weight of responsibility, knowing that people were now expecting her to deliver something extraordinary. The evening crowd began to trickle in, a mix of familiar faces and newcomers. Some had heard stories from friends or colleagues, and their curiosity was palpable. As she moved among the tables, taking orders and serving meals, she felt the gentle hum of anticipation around her. Each glance from a guest carried a quiet expectation, and she realized that her music had become a bridge between her and the people in the room, a way to connect without words. When she approached the piano, her hands rested lightly on the keys, and she allowed herself a deep breath. She remembered the first time she had played here, the dare that had set everything in motion. The memory brought a small smile to her lips. She had come a long way since that moment, and she felt a growing sense of confidence and readiness. This time she would not just play for herself. She would play to share a story, to let her music speak to everyone present. The first notes were gentle, weaving through the restaurant with a quiet elegance. Guests paused, leaning in, listening intently as the melody unfolded. She allowed herself to lose track of time, to let her fingers move naturally, following the rhythm of her thoughts and emotions. The music seemed to take on a life of its own, filling the space and drawing the audience closer with each note. The man from the corner table watched quietly, a look of admiration clear in his eyes, and she felt a surge of confidence knowing that her music had an impact. As she transitioned to a more complex piece, the room seemed to transform. Guests leaned forward in their seats, some whispering to each other in awe, others simply closing their eyes and allowing the music to envelop them. Her fingers danced across the keys with precision and emotion, blending technical skill with heartfelt expression. She could feel the energy of the room responding to her, each note carrying a story, each pause creating a connection with the audience. Midway through the performance, she noticed a few children sitting at a nearby table, their eyes wide with wonder. They leaned slightly toward her, captivated by the melodies. She allowed herself a small smile, letting her music take on a playful, whimsical quality that seemed to speak directly to their sense of curiosity and imagination. She realized that music could reach across age and experience, creating shared moments of joy and inspiration. The audience responded with visible enthusiasm. Some tapped their fingers on the table in rhythm, others nodded their heads or whispered compliments to each other. The energy in the room was electric, a blend of excitement, appreciation, and awe. She realized that her performance was no longer just about playing notes. It was about creating an experience, crafting a moment that would linger in the hearts of those who were present. The man from the corner table approached her after the piece ended, his expression one of sincere admiration. He congratulated her, praising not just her technical skill, but the emotion and storytelling she conveyed through her music. He spoke about opportunities for her to perform at events, suggesting that her talent deserved a wider audience. She listened, a mix of humility and excitement swelling within her. It was one thing to play for the restaurant, but another to consider performing for a larger crowd, to share her gift with people beyond this room. Her manager also stopped by, his face glowing with pride. He mentioned that several guests had asked about her availability for private events and small concerts. The thought of performing outside the restaurant both thrilled and frightened her. She realized that she was stepping into a new phase of her life, one that would demand courage, dedication, and continued practice. But the excitement outweighed the fear, and she knew she was ready to embrace the opportunities ahead. During a short break, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From practicing alone in her small apartment to performing for a curious audience in a bustling restaurant, the transformation felt almost surreal. She remembered the initial dare, the nervous excitement of that first night, and the way the audience had responded. It was a reminder that courage and willingness to take risks could lead to remarkable experiences, and that talent, when nurtured and shared, had the power to touch lives in unexpected ways. As the evening continued, she played several more pieces, each one infused with a mix of technical skill and emotional expression. The audience remained captivated, and she could see the impact of her music on each person. Some were visibly moved, their expressions reflecting the emotions evoked by the melodies. Others clapped enthusiastically between pieces, offering words of encouragement and appreciation. The connection she felt with her audience was profound, and she realized that these moments were more than performances. They were shared experiences, moments of human connection and emotion. When the night drew to a close, the applause was overwhelming. Guests lingered, reluctant to leave, wanting to savor the final notes and the feelings they had evoked. The man from the corner table extended his hand, congratulating her once more and encouraging her to continue pursuing her passion. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, recognizing that her journey had taken a remarkable turn. What had started as a playful challenge had transformed into an opportunity to share her gift, to inspire others, and to step into a future filled with possibilities. Walking home later that night, she felt the city around her in a new light. The sounds, the lights, and the energy of the street seemed to echo the music she had played, a constant reminder of the courage, skill, and determination that had brought her here. She reflected on the past few weeks, the transformation that had taken place within her, and the doors that had begun to open. She understood that her journey was far from over, but she also knew that she had discovered a strength and purpose within herself that would guide her forward. As she lay in bed replaying the melodies in her mind, she felt a sense of peace and anticipation. The piano, the music, and the connection she had made with her audience had given her a glimpse of what was possible. She knew that challenges would arise, that fear and doubt would return at times, but she also knew that she had the courage and talent to face them. The night's performance had not just been a success, it had been a revelation, a moment that confirmed her potential and set the stage for the opportunities yet to come. The following weeks were a whirlwind of excitement and discovery. The young waitress found herself performing more frequently, both at the restaurant and at small gatherings and events where guests had requested her presence. Each performance brought new faces, new reactions, and new experiences that pushed her to grow as a musician and as a person. She began to realize that her life had shifted in ways she could never have anticipated when the playful dare had first been made. She practiced diligently, spending hours refining her pieces, learning new melodies, and experimenting with improvisation. Each note she played became a reflection of her dedication, her passion, and the emotions she wanted to convey. Music had always been a private sanctuary, but now it was her bridge to the world. It connected her to people who had never seen her beyond the apron she wore, allowing them to experience the depth of her talent and the sincerity of her expression. The restaurant remained a familiar stage, but her audience had expanded. Friends of guests, curious neighbors, and even people from nearby businesses came to hear her play. The once ordinary space had become a gathering place for music and shared experience. She noticed that the energy of the room changed whenever she began to play. Conversations paused, attention focused, and the collective emotions of the audience seemed to blend with the melodies she created. With each performance, her confidence continued to grow. She was no longer anxious or hesitant. Instead, she felt a quiet assurance that her music could communicate feelings words sometimes could not. She realized that the true power of music lay not just in skill or technique, but in the ability to touch hearts, evoke memories, and inspire emotion. This understanding fueled her desire to continue, to improve, and to share more of herself through every note. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, the man who had first dared her approached her once again. His demeanor had changed completely from that initial playful teasing. Now he was respectful, genuinely interested, and encouraging. He spoke of opportunities beyond the restaurant, suggesting local events, music schools, and even the possibility of performing in larger venues. She listened with a mixture of humility and excitement, recognizing that her talent could lead to places she had never imagined. His words reinforced her belief that courage, combined with skill, could open doors she had never thought possible. Her manager continued to support her, ensuring that the restaurant provided space for her performances, while also allowing her to explore new avenues. They discussed ideas for scheduling and audience engagement, creating a balance that allowed her to maintain her regular work while pursuing her musical growth. The support of those around her strengthened her resolve, reminding her that she was not alone in her journey, and that encouragement often comes from unexpected places. The young waitress also began to notice the subtle but meaningful impact her music had on her audience. Guests who had come in for a simple meal were now leaving with smiles, renewed energy, and a sense of inspiration. Some shared stories of how a particular melody reminded them of childhood memories, a loved one, or a special moment in their life. Others expressed gratitude for the calming effect her music had on a stressful day. She realized that her talent was not just entertainment. It was a source of connection, comfort, and joy. With this understanding, she began to approach her performances with intentionality. Each piece she played was chosen with care, considering the emotions she wanted to evoke and the stories she hoped to tell. Improvisation became a way to respond to the energy of the room, to interact with the audience, and to create moments that felt unique and personal. She found immense satisfaction in seeing the smiles, the nods, and the attentive expressions of her listeners. The connection between musician and audience became a dialogue, an unspoken conversation carried entirely by the music. Outside of the restaurant, she also began to explore opportunities for growth. She attended small workshops, observed other performers, and sought advice from mentors who recognized her potential. Each experience provided new perspectives, helping her to refine her technique, broaden her repertoire, and gain confidence in her abilities. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, learning, and a willingness to embrace challenges were equally essential. As her reputation grew, she was invited to participate in local events and gatherings where her music could reach even wider audiences. She felt a mixture of nervousness and exhilaration each time, knowing that new opportunities meant stepping into unfamiliar territory. Yet the thrill of performing, the joy of sharing her gift, and the knowledge that she could touch lives through music outweighed any fear she felt. One particular evening, she performed at a small community event where the audience was larger than she had ever played for before. The room was filled with people of all ages, some familiar, some strangers. She felt a momentary flicker of doubt, but quickly reminded herself of how far she had come. She closed her eyes, let her fingers find the keys, and allowed the music to flow naturally. The first notes carried through the room, capturing the attention of everyone present. As she played, she could feel the energy of the audience, their emotions merging with the melodies in a way that was both humbling and exhilarating. When the final note faded, the applause was overwhelming. People stood, clapped enthusiastically, and shared their admiration. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music had created a lasting impression, that she had shared a part of herself with the world, and that her courage to perform had transformed not just her life, but the experience of those who had listened. The moment reinforced her belief in the power of taking risks, embracing opportunity, and trusting in one's own abilities. Returning to her regular life at the restaurant, she found a balance between her work and her growing musical pursuits. The piano in the corner remained a constant, a familiar and comforting presence. Yet her perspective had changed. She no longer saw it as merely an instrument for personal enjoyment, but as a tool to connect, inspire, and transform. Each time she played, she carried with her the lessons of courage, resilience, and the joy of sharing her gift. The young waitress reflected often on the journey that had brought her here, from the initial dare that had seemed intimidating and playful, to the recognition, opportunities, and self-discovery that followed. She realized that life could change in unexpected ways when one seized moments of courage, embraced talent, and shared it with others. The music had given her a voice, a purpose, and a sense of connection that transcended ordinary boundaries. She continued to perform, to grow, and to explore new possibilities. Her confidence, once tentative, was now solid and steady. She understood the responsibility that came with her talent and the potential impact it had on others. Each note she played carried intention, emotion, and the history of her journey. She had become more than a waitress. She was a musician, an artist, and a storyteller through sound. Looking toward the future, she embraced the unknown with optimism and determination. Opportunities to perform in new venues, collaborate with other musicians, and share her gift with even larger audiences awaited her. She knew challenges would arise, but the experiences she had gained had prepared her to face them with courage and grace. The journey she had begun with a simple dare had transformed her life, opening doors she had never imagined and allowing her to step fully into her potential. As she lay in bed, reflecting on the events that had shaped her journey, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. The piano, the music, the support of people around her, and her own determination had all combined to create a path she could walk with confidence. She knew that her story was still unfolding, and that each day would bring new opportunities to grow, to inspire, and to share her music. With each passing moment, she felt more certain that she was exactly where she was meant to be, and that the journey she had begun would continue to lead her toward extraordinary experiences and fulfillment.